So, we talked about growing this summer. We talked a lot about habits, developing good habits in our life, and we've been just looking at Jesus' life. So I want to continue to do that today. So today was probably the last message in the series. And so I had all different kind of thoughts in my mind as to how I wanted to kind of end this. And because of kind of life circumstances in my life, I thought I'd end with this one, and it's growing a stress-free life. How many of you know stress? Yeah, I think we all know stress. We all know. Let me ask you, I have a little quiz for you, okay? So what I want you to do is, just kind of mentally, I have 6 questions for you, and kind of keep track on your finger how many of these you say yes to, okay? The first one is this. Do you usually feel like you're in a hurry? Okay, there's one for me. Is your to-do list, now whether it's a written to-do list or a mental to-do list, is your to-do list usually unrealistically long? Anybody? Okay. Number 3, do you use days off to catch up with unfinished work? Number 4, has more than one person recently told you to slow down? Number 5, do you often feel guilty when you relax? And number 6, do you have to get sick in order to take time off? Okay? So 6 questions. If you answer yes to 3, 4, or more, then this message is definitely for you. If you didn't answer yes to any of those, you're free to go right now. Actually, if you didn't answer yes to any of these, you're at home right now. And maybe you're tuning in online, right? But let me read a quote from you from this book. The book is called Margin. It's by Dr. Richard Swenson. I think he works, I'm not sure if he works full-time or whatever. He worked with Focus on the Family. Everybody's heard of Focus on the Family, right? So he said this: the conditions of modern day living devour margin. Marginless is being 30 minutes late to the doctor's office because you were 20 minutes late from getting out of the hairdresser. I don't know how long ago he wrote this. I don't know what they call it anymore. But apparently he's talking about a woman here, I guess. I don't know. Because you were 10 minutes late dropping your children off at school because the car ran out of gas 2 blocks from the gas station and you forgot your purse. That's marginlessness. Okay, marginless is fatigue. Margin is energy. Marginless is hurry. Margin is calm. Marginless is our culture. Margin is counterculture, having some space in your schedule. Marginless is reality. Margin is remedy. So we want to talk a little bit about how we can, in our life, create a life, grow a life, increasingly more and more stress-free. There's a passage in the Old Testament in Leviticus that talks about, now we don't live this way, so sometimes we kind of miss this and we miss the nugget in there for us for today. It's talking about agriculture and growing crops. And it says this: when you harvest the crops of your land, do not harvest the grain along the edges of your field. I remember when I used to, in high school, I used to go up on the farm with Pete, and we used to work up on the farm, and his dad would go through and pick the corn with the corn picker, the machine. And then what we would do is we would get these things and you put them on your thumb, Pete, put them on your thumb, and you go to the edges of the field because the harvester couldn't get the edges, and you would pick the corn by hand because you didn't want to waste anything, right, Pete? Yeah. And so you would like kind of shuck it right there, and you would throw it into a basket, right? Well, this is saying this: don't do that. This is this law in Leviticus. Don't do the edges of your field. And then it says also, let's say when you're carrying it and you drop some, right? You drop a few ears of corn, or you drop some. Don't pick that back up. So that's what it says. This is this law in Leviticus for everybody to abide by. Well, why is this? Well, this is talking about margins, right? And you may think, margins? Well, how is that margins? Well, he says this, so that when the poor come, right, they have something the word they use is glean, right? Don't glean everything. There's something left for them. Do you get the principle? So the principle is this. The principle applies to us. We need to create margins in our life. Time margins. And I know you look at me going, time margins, what is that, right? I mean, there's not enough time in the day to do all the stuff that we need to do. But also financial margins. Well, why is that? Because when those in need come your way, when there's a need comes your way, you have margins to be able to help, to give of your time, to give of your resources. This is God's way of showing us, teaching us that we need to have margins in our life, okay? So what I want to do today is, hopefully, I know I always say this, but hopefully today's not going to be a huge, long message, right? I'm going to do more of a Michelle type message. 10 minutes and out, we're out of here, right? So I want to talk about 4 principles from the life of Jesus that we can look at, that we can emulate, that we can grow in, okay? So the first principle I have entitled motivation. Motivation. And so you might want to jot by motivation to know what I'm living for. To know what I'm living for. And hopefully I'm gonna talk about this in a lot of detail, this number 1, and the other 3 won't be that much, okay? So Jesus begins his ministry by kind of revealing his life mission. If you look in Luke chapter 4, it's kind of what we're going to be looking at. He said this, he said, "The Spirit of the Lord is on me because he has anointed me to preach the good news to the poor." So he was sent, he still talks about he was sent to proclaim freedom for prisoners and recovery of sight to the blind, to release the oppressed and proclaim the year of our Lord's favor. So right away, he talks about his kind of mission in life. So I want to talk to you about that this morning a little bit. Talk to you about what is your mission in life? Why are you here? And to be honest with you, I get more questions as a pastor about this than just about anything else. I just don't know what my purpose is, right? I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And I think it's important for us to talk about this and to look at the life of Jesus. Some more scriptures. John 5:30 says this, "I seek not to please myself, but him who sent me," Jesus said. John 8:14, he said this, "I know where I came from and where I am going." John 8:29 says this, "I always do what pleases him." He's talking about the Father. Not what pleases others, right? How many of you, don't raise your hand, but just think yourself, how many of you would you call yourself a people pleaser? I just kind of worry about, what everybody else thinks of me, right? And some people aren't that way. I just went to my friend's 60th birthday party last night, and he's the opposite of me. I'm a people pleaser, he's the opposite, right? He's just not that at all. And so many of us are that way, and so you're a people pleaser. One of the things that you have a hard time doing, we're going to talk about in a minute, is to say no. Because you feel like if you say no, you're not doing what? You're not pleasing somebody, exactly. And then he says this, he doesn't live to please others. He said, let's think about this for a minute. Just in life, not talking about scripturally or whatever, right? But even God can't please everybody, can he? Right? God can't even please everybody. I mean, I talk to people all the time, they're not pleased with the way God does things, right? Can't believe that God would do this, God would do that. So why would we try to do something that God can't even do? Please everybody. Why are we trying to do something that God can't? And then in Luke, now I know the context here is money, but in Luke 16:13 it says this, "No one can serve 2 masters." And so I know the context is money, but let me just say this. I think there's a principle here, and the principle is this, is don't give equal value to things that are not equally valuable. Let me say that again. Don't give equal value to things that are not equally valuable. So ask yourself this question. What are you working so hard at right now, at this moment? What are you working so hard at that in just 10 years is it going to be meaningless? And if we start to look at our life and we start to evaluate our life, I think that we'll find that we spend a lot of our time and our energy at things that just aren't going to matter. They're not going to matter in the long term of our life. And when I say long term today is different than long term 30 years ago, right? 30 years ago, long term could be 30 years. Long term now, the way things are changing so fast, so rapidly, that long term can be a year, can be 2 years. How many know that things change so fast it's hard to keep up with them, right? I mean, how often are they coming out with a new phone, right? I mean, new phones coming out I mean, it seems like it's every couple months there's something new, there's some new technology. I don't know how many of you keep up with technology in the idea of how fast we are growing in our technology. But things are changing exponentially fast. And so this idea of motivation, what is it that you wake up for in the morning? So a number of years ago, actually it was, we did a message about Way to Be You, right, Pete? This idea of that you're unique, that you are special. And we talked about style. You've got style. We use that as an acronym. Well, there's another one that's called shape, right? That we all have a unique shape. And this idea, if you want to write that word down, shape, each one of these letters stands for something. And so we have shape. The S stands for spiritual gifts. We all have different spiritual gifts. The H stands for heart's desire. And I'm going to kind of break a couple of these down here in a little bit. The A stands for ability. The P stands for personality. And the E stands for experience. And so you may have a spiritual gift like somebody else. You may have the same desire in your heart as somebody else. You may even have the same abilities as someone else. You may have the same even personality as someone else. That would be very, very, very rare to have all those the same as somebody else. But what you will never have that someone else has is your life experience. Your life experience, no one else can have your life experience. So your life experience changes all those other things. So there are two things that are extremely important in our life. And that first thing is aptitude. So I want to talk to you about how do you find your life's purpose? Well, your aptitude, what is it that you're good at? Now, it's not as simple as just looking at it and saying, well, I'm good at sports, or I'm good at sales. Sometimes our talents are like natural resources. Human resources oftentimes are like natural resources. I'm going to explain this to you in a minute, okay? And sometimes we have to go mining for them. Or sometimes a circumstance has to come about for us to even see what our talents are. Okay? Now, give me a minute because I'm going to talk about that. But let me just talk about the other thing. So you have aptitude, but the other thing is you have passion. Sometimes you can be really, really good at something, have a great aptitude for something, but you have no passion for it. I recently heard a story of this a concert pianist, and she was absolutely phenomenal. And so after a concert one time, she was back in her I guess, dressing room, and someone was there, and they were talking to her. A friend was there and looked at her and said, that was fantastic. And she was, oh, okay, thanks. He said, did you not think it was good? She said, well, it was okay. He said, why is it you have no excitement about this? And she said, I don't know, it just doesn't excite me. He said, well, why do you do it? She said, well, because that's what I do. And she was in a musical family, right? She was in a musical family, and everybody played an instrument, and she played the piano, and she had this great aptitude for it. She just had no passion for it. And so at that moment, she realized, this isn't what I want to do with my life. Even though I am, Michelle, give me some water. Even though I'm extremely good at it, right? I have no passion for it. It's not why I get up in the morning. And she began to, there's a whole long story behind it, but she began to look at her life and decide, figure out, what is it that I have a passion for? And it was in like sales and marketing, believe it or not. And so that's what she got into, and find that she was extremely good at it. So let me just tell you a story about one of my sons, Brock. As a young boy growing up, both my boys, right? They played sports because I played sports. They loved sports and they were good at it. And so Brock got into ninth grade. I left Hillcrest and went to Thomas Jefferson, played basketball in ninth grade and did well. And then as a sophomore, he went out for basketball and he got cut from the basketball team. Now, it could have been devastating for him. But at that moment, now listen, circumstances in his life led him to a different path. It's because of circumstances. And so Brock plays the guitar up here. It was because of his sophomore year in school, when he got cut from the basketball team, he picked up the guitar. Now, up to that point, he had no idea that he had an aptitude for it, right? Listen, I bought a banjo, right? And I tried to learn how to play the banjo, and as long and as hard as I blew into that thing, I could not make it work, right? Just didn't have an aptitude for it. But he picked up the guitar and started playing it, and lo and behold, he discovered a hidden ability that he had in his life. So that's why I say sometimes people say, I just don't know why, what it is that I'm meant to do or whatever. And sometimes I think our natural resources, our human resources, go untapped. People don't discover the giftings that they have within them. And so you have to ask yourself, what is it that I have a passion for? So you look for ability, but you also link your ability with your passion. So I'm good at this. Do I love doing this? And so what is it that you wake up in the morning to do? Let me just tell you this. And you're going to resonate with this, I guarantee it. Do you ever do something that you've been doing it for hours and it seems like minutes, right? How about this? Have you ever done something for minutes? It seems like hours. Like I can't believe this. I can't believe I have to do this, right? So that's a little clue, a little hint to a passion in your life. I meet all kinds of people that don't enjoy what they do. It's just amazing to me. So I was talking to, I went to a party last night, and I was talking to somebody about their job, and he said, and he's about my age, he said, I've been doing it now for 8 years. I finally found what really excites me, what he's doing right now as a job. He goes, I love it. He goes, I just can't get enough. And I wake up in the morning, I can't wait to go do it. I can't wait to wake up in the morning. And he said, what about you? Do you love what you do? I go, yeah, I do. I love it. I can't imagine doing anything else. I can't imagine getting up on Monday morning, having a week before me, and realizing that I'm not going to be doing anything that excites me, that energizes me this week at all. And they use a phrase like, I just endure it. Or they'll say something like, I just live for the weekends. You ever hear anybody say that? I just live for the weekends. Then every once in a while, you meet somebody, you run into somebody, like my friend last night, Jimmy, was saying, I just love it. Now he's talking about a job. He said, I absolutely love it. Matter of fact, it's kind of like, this isn't what I do. This is kind of who I am, right? Can you imagine that? Can you imagine living your life just as who you are, right? And that's your job. And it fits so well with your personality. Sometimes you can be really good at something and not have a passion for it. So I think we need to, there are lots of There are lots of ways, tests that you can take. Now, they're not always super accurate, right? But there's a lot of ways that you can go on, take some tests to find out what kind of, like a Myers-Briggs is a good thing to take. How many ever taken a Myers-Briggs? Yeah, kind of find out your personality and what, kind of what you do. And I did this whole thing with Wycliffe one time, and it's a battery of tests and questions and everything. And then she came up with this paragraph that kind of described me. And I read through it and I was like, wow, this is like so accurate. Like, how did you come up with this from this test? She said, what, just stuff that you said. Like, one of the things she said she said, for Wycliffe, she said, Jeff needs to be involved in new initiatives, right? New initiatives, startups, new things. And I go, that is so me. How did you know? How did you come up with that from this test? She said, no, that's what you told me. I go, what do you mean I told you? She said, you told me about how you started a couple businesses, how you started a number of ministries, how you started these things, right? This is what I told her. She said, never once in any of those things did you tell me how they panned out. How did the businesses pan out? How did the ministries pan out? How did those things pan out, right? Well, that's not important to you, and how they panned out. Whether they did or they didn't, what she was saying is this, not that I didn't care about, the end result, but just that what excited me, right? What motivated me, what I had a passion for was these new things, new initiatives, right? Creating new things. And so there are some great tools out there to help you discover that, to help you discover talents and abilities. Now, sometimes it's just life experience. Sometimes life experience, life has to happen to you. Here's the thing. This was amazing to me. Oftentimes we live our lives as if life is linear, don't we? In other words, even like when you think about schooling, I'm trying to help my children right now navigate through this time, and I fall prey to this linearity of life. Well, the next thing you have to do is you have to go to college. You have to get a good degree. Get your good degree and get a job, right? But life really isn't linear, is it? If you really stop and think about it, life isn't linear. Life is organic. And so my friend, and I was just kind of discovering this, thinking about this last night, talking to him. He's in his 50s like me. And he said, I've just now kind of discovered this new sort of talent, ability that I never knew I had. He always had it. But it was life experience, right? It was situation, circumstance in his life that brought this talent, this ability in him kind of to the surface. You see what I mean by using the analogy of mining, right? Like when we mine for gold and silver, we have to dig for it. Sometimes in your life, to find out what your gifting is, sometimes you have to mine for it. Sometimes you have to dig deep to find out what it is I'm really good at. And what is my passion? The second thing then is this. The second thing, there's all different ways to say this, and I just picked this word concentration. Concentration. Do what matters most. First, I discover in my life, now listen, we can talk about it. Maybe I'm not using words that you think I should use in church, I mean, God has purpose and plan for you, and I don't think I don't think that way. I don't think that God has one specific thing for you to do, and you have to try to figure out that one thing. I think God's created us, given us giftings and abilities, and those giftings and abilities that we have can be used in a variety of different ways. And God says, listen, you are created in my image, and my image is one of creation. And so I want you to create. I've given you a life. Do you remember when we did Donald Miller? We showed Donald Miller. We had a Bible study on Wednesday nights. Do you remember that? Let me just tell you, Donald Miller said this one time. He was talking about this idea that the church kind of says something, that God has a plan for your life, and he has a special thing, he has one person for you, and he has, right, all these things that they kind of sound good, But the truth is this. He said, can you imagine if you were sitting at your dinner table and your father said to you, here son or daughter, here's $50. It's for you. And then he began to say, now what I want you to do is I want you to take 10 of it and go get a haircut, right? And I want you to use another 10 to go get, and he told you how to spend the $50. Is the $50 yours? No. The $50 is still your father's that he's spending through you, right? And that's this idea. Is our life, or is it just God just going to live this way through us? No, he says, listen, I want you to live your life. I want you to choose. What is it that you want to do? And I'll be there with you. You want to try that? Good. I'm there with you. I'll help you in that. I've given you talents and abilities and giftings. Use those and create, and you know what? Make this world a better place. Because it takes all kinds, doesn't it? It takes all kinds. It takes salespeople. It takes plumbers, right? It takes carpenters. It takes lawyers. Maybe not lawyers, but it just takes all. Right? It takes all kinds of people. If we were all the same, our societies, our cultures wouldn't function at all. So it takes all of us. So what we want to do is we want to concentrate. We want to do what matters most. There's another story of a fireman. And this guy was talking to him. He said, what do you do? He goes, I'm a fireman. He said, how long have you been a fireman? He goes, I've always been a fireman. He said, really? He said, from the time I was young. He said, it was actually a problem when I was in school, in elementary school, because everybody wanted to be a fireman. But I really wanted to be a fireman. And he said, when he got to high school, getting ready to graduate, he said, a teacher one time asked me what I'm going to do now. He said, I'm going to be a fireman. And he said, you're going to be a fireman? You're going to waste your life being a fireman. You have so much ability and so much talent that you're going to be a fireman. You're wasting your life. You need to go to college and make something of yourself. And he ignored him, and he became a fireman. And he loved being a fireman. And then he said, as a matter of fact, a number of years ago, there was a car accident, and I went and saved a man from this car accident, pulled him out of the car, saved his wife too. It was the teacher that said, I'd be wasting my life. He said, I think he thinks different of me now. But we need to focus. Listen, it says this. At daybreak, Jesus went out to a solitary place. The people were looking for him. When they came to where he was, they tried to keep him from leaving them, but he said, I must preach the good news of the kingdom of God to the other towns, because this is why I was sent. And so Jesus kept his focus. He didn't try to please everybody. He didn't try to be what everybody else wanted him to be. He was focused like the fireman. No, I'm a fireman. That's what I'm going to do. That's who I am. Right? That's what gives me life when I wake up in the morning, that I get to be a fireman today. And so stay focused and concentrate. And so Jesus, listen, this is what you and I have to do. You have to learn to say no to some good things. There are a lot of good things out there to do. You have to learn to say no. If you're a people pleaser, that's the hardest thing for you to say, is no. You don't want to disappoint anybody. And by never saying no, because you don't want to disappoint people, guess what you do, inevitably? You disappoint people. Because you don't say no, you say yes, and you can't keep all your commitments, and so you disappoint people. We need to learn how to say no to some good things, to stay focused on purpose. Luke 9:51 says this, as the time approached for him to be taken up into heaven, Jesus resolutely set out for Jerusalem. You like that word? Resolutely. We need to do some things resolutely. We need to say, no, this is what I'm going to do. I need to learn how to focus on one thing. Well, how do we do that? Well, one of the ways that we do it is saying no, right? Learn how to say no. Another thing is this, I talk about this a number of times in here, is learn how to audit your life. We know how to audit our finances, don't we? But how do we audit our life? This is a hard thing to do. We need to assess, listen to me, everybody look at me for a minute. We need to assess our life. You need to learn how to assess your life. You need to learn how to assess it physically, right? How many of you have ever been in a time in your life where you worked so hard that you got physically sick? You got physically sick. You wore yourself down so much that you got physically sick. Because we're not auditing our life, we're not learning how to assess our life properly physically. Next one's a big one. We do the same thing emotionally. Learn how to assess your life emotionally. Another one is financially, right? Learn how to assess it financially. There are people out there, that's what they do for a living. Find somebody to help you do that. The same with emotionally, the same with physically. You can find other people to help you do this. And the last one, and I don't mean it's last, but is spiritually. Learn how to assess yourself spiritually. How am I doing? How am I doing spiritually? And I don't mean that you have a spiritual aspect of your life and a non-spiritual aspect of your life. I mean spiritually, how are you doing? How is your soul? Most of us, listen to me, most of us deceive ourselves on how much reserve we have. Most of us do. We deceive ourselves. Although it seems, self-assessment seems a good idea, sometimes we don't even make time in our life to even do that. So we need to ask ourselves, where am I in my life? You need to ask yourself daily, where am I overextended? Am I overextended in my emotional life right now? Am I overextended? If I'm overextended in my emotional life, then I need to do the things to bring that back in line. Maybe physically you're okay. Maybe financially you're okay. But emotionally you are absolutely taxed. And so we need to learn to address that. So learn to audit our life, learn to say no. Learn to do this. How many of you are schedulers? You're a scheduler. Learn how to schedule then free time in your life. Schedule it. So a friend of mine went to this seminar, and there were all these CEOs of these large companies, and as they were talking about their schedules. And do you know what the first thing for a new year, like 2019 coming up, the first thing they schedule into their calendar for the new year is their downtime, or their vacations, or their quarterly times away, right? And you think, oh, well, it's how nice to have the luxury to do that. Listen, they are so busy that they know if they don't schedule it, it's not going to get done. And why do you suppose they think that's so important? Think of a CEO for a minute. What is it that a CEO brings to the company? Well, he's not out in the factory making the products. He's not, right? What is he doing? He's thinking, right? He's being creative. He's managing people. What does that take? Well, that takes a well-rested mind, a well-rested body in your the physical aspect of your life. So the first thing he does is he schedules his downtime. And then after that, he starts plugging in everything else. And so learn how to schedule free time in your life. So listen to this. It says, the formula for margin is straightforward. Power minus load equals margin. So think about your own life for a minute. Power minus load equals margin. Now you can sit and this is that Dr. Swenson. You can kind of chart this yourself. You can look, he defines power as energy, as time, right? You have a limited amount of energy, don't you? You have a limited amount of time, skills, emotion, and physical capacity, finances, and social support. That's how he defines power. So look at your life and go, okay, I have so much power. This is how much power I have. Load then is this. Load consists of such factors as problems, debt, deadlines, interpersonal conflicts. And so it's obvious that when our load gets greater than our power, then we enter into negative margin status. that means we're overloaded. And severe negative margins, we've all been there, right? Severe negative margins for extended period of time lead to what? Stress and burnout. That's where it leads to. I mean, you've all probably known somebody, if it's not yourself, you've known somebody who has experienced burnout, who has needed to, it's kind of just, they shut down. It's because a lack of margins in their life. I'm going to give you some tips for creating margin in your life. Just a few tips. One is this. I often see people's calendars, their schedules, right? And we schedule things like back to back to back to back. One of the tips that they say is this: give yourself a buffer between appointments. Give yourself a buffer. You pick the time. 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, right? Give yourself a buffer between appointments, activities. Not just appointments, but activities. Don't jump from one activity to the next. Another one they say is this: create a morning routine. Listen, I didn't have time to read up on this, but he said, experts say this: how you start your day is typically how you end your day. In other words, what he's saying is this: if you start your day hurried and rushed, chances are you're going to end your day hurried and rushed. If you start your day slow, planned, right, that you're going to end your day in the same way. Another one is this: stick to a limited amount of priorities in a day. That goes back to this idea of your to-do list being too long, right? Stick to a limited amount, maybe 5 priorities for the day. I want to get these 3 things done, these 5 things done. Not this unrealistic list of, I have these 20 things I have to do today. It just creates stress in your life. And so the fourth one is this: be proactive and not reactive. If you look at your life, I think that what you'll find is most of the time we're reacting to things in our life. That's all we're doing, rather than be proactive about it. So what does that look like? Well, how many of you have good intentions? I'm going to wake up early in the morning and I'm going to do these things. You have good intentions, and you never seem to do it because you're reacting to the morning. You're reacting to it rather than being proactive and plan it, right? So the night before, I'm not this way, but I'm trying to learn how to be this way a little bit more, right? Kind of, because Michelle's this way. She plans everything. She has our vacation planned. We're going to do this day, and we're going to eat this for dinner, and we're going to do these things, right? Now, the great thing about that is that it's not so rigid that if we change it, it throws a wrench into everything. But I can see the value in planning and having things she plans meals for the week, and so she knows. So when Thursday comes, she's not reacting to the day and go, oh my God, what are we going to do? What are we going to eat for dinner? There's nothing in there for dinner. Are you with me? Right? So when you're proactive about it, Thursday comes, well, I had that plan. Monday I bought the meat for the Thursday meal. See, that's what I'm talking about, being proactive. Proactive. So you can be proactive about your morning. Have a planned morning. I'm going to get up, I'm going to do these things, and you plan it ahead of time, and you set things out, and you're ready for the morning to happen. So rather than just reacting to life, because here's why: because you are going to have to react to some things, right? Because life throws us curveballs. So sometimes things just happen. So the more that you can be prepared for, and listen, if anybody can say, well, that's just not my personality, it's me, right? This isn't about personality. This isn't about, right? This isn't about, well, that's just the way I am. Anybody can plan to alleviate stress in their life. A fifth thing would be this, would be to limit social media. Just limit it. I see so many people that are just constantly on social media. There's a whole genre of videos out there of people being videoed on their phones, like walking and running into things and falling into fountains. You ever see these? They're hysterical. A lady just walking, falling headlong straight into a fountain because she's on her phone, right? Learn to limit your social media. And I know it's hard to do. Sometimes it takes someone else to take the social media away from you, right? Or to tell you, put it down. Just put it down for a while. And what you'll find is you'll discover that life is still good, even without social media, right? And maybe even, can I say better? Okay, maybe not better. All right, I won't go that far. All right, so number 3 is this. Number 3 is restoration. Restoration. Take the time you need to recharge. Take the time you need to recharge. Let me ask you a question. Everybody look at me for a minute. Do you really believe living like Jesus is desirable? Raise your hand. If you think living like Jesus, that's a desirable thing. Christy, you don't? Oh, Christy didn't raise her hand. She was like this. I don't know Jesus. I'm just kidding. I know she wants to be like Jesus. Let me ask you a question. You read your Bible. Do you think Jesus was a workaholic? Absolutely not. Jesus was no workaholic. And yet in our culture, in our society, I see people, especially men, that wear that like a badge of honor. Wear it like a badge of honor. Oh yeah, I work. That's one thing I do. I work. Good for you. Good for you. Not a very balanced life. Not a very healthy life, right? You think you're being productive. You're probably being less productive. So I want to ask that person, if they raise their hand and they're that person, why did you say that you think that living like Jesus is desirable? Because we live the opposite of Jesus. Listen to some text. Luke 4. At daybreak, Jesus went out to a solitary place. But the news about Jesus spread even more. This is Luke 5:15. Many people came to hear, but Jesus often slipped away to be alone. Mark 1:35. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went to a solitary place. So Jesus knew how to create margin. Let me just tell you about 2 things right now. What he did was this. He would get away to pray or to meditate. How many have heard that word before, meditate? How many say, I don't know how to meditate? Raise your hand. Tell me you don't know how to meditate. Okay, let me tell you, you do know how to meditate. Absolutely 100% you know how to meditate. Here's how I know. How many of you worry? Raise your hand. Come on, everybody raise your hand. You all worry. So let me tell you, worry, here's what worry is. You take a negative thought and you think about it. And you think about it some more. And you think about it a little bit more. And you dwell on it. And you dwell on it. And that negative thought consumes you. It fills your mind. That negative thought crowds out all other thoughts. That negative thought consumes you to the point of stress. You've all experienced that, haven't you? See, you know how to meditate. You're just meditating on the wrong thing. That's all meditation is, friends. So rather than a negative thought, that I'm suggesting that you do the same thing with a positive thought. You take a positive thought. And so, let me give you an example. Take a positive thought. My God loves me. Is that a positive thought? Positive thought. And so I think about that. And I dwell on that. And I let that thought crowd out all other thoughts to the point of peace in my life. That's all meditation is. That's all it is. See, we all know how to do it. We just do it in a negative fashion. And so I'm suggesting that we start that now. So restoration isn't just about prayer and meditation. The next verse says this, then because so many people were coming and going that they did not have a chance to eat, he said to them, come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest. Get away and get some rest. I already talked about this. Larry and Cammie Robbins were our directors at Wycliffe. Listen, they were as hard-working people as anybody that I know. but they taught Michelle and I margins. You know, here's a funny thing. I'm going to tell you something. This is what I learned from Larry and Kemi. I have a lot of friends, and a lot of my friends joke with me about my vacations and my time off. You know what? And I'm so glad they do, because it means they're paying attention to what I'm trying to do. It's what Larry and Kemi did for me. They didn't just tell me, they lived it in front of me. They said, listen, how many of you have ever taken a 2-week vacation? Raise your hand, please, raise your hand. 2-week vacation. Those of you who have taken 2-week vacations understand why a 2-week vacation is necessary. How many of you have taken just 1-week vacations? Raise your hand. After 1 week, you're coming home and you're going, I'm just not ready to go home yet. Anybody? I'm not ready to go home yet. After 2 weeks, those who took 2-week vacations, after 2 weeks, what do you say? I can't wait to get home. I'm ready to get home. I can't wait to get home. Because here's the thing. You get on vacation, right? Your first couple days are spent doing what? Well, getting situated, getting settled, getting everything together, right? You know, making plans and all this kind of stuff. And then you have a couple days where you start to just the beginning process of unwinding, right? And it's time to go home. And you go, the second week, the unwinding process continues, right? And you unwind and you relax, and right? Then you find yourself at the end going, you know, I'm ready. I'm ready to go back. I can't wait to get back and engage and get back to do what I do. And so they modeled that before us. And so Michelle and I do the same thing. We say, you know what, I'm not just gonna preach, I'm not just gonna say it, I'm gonna model it. And so my friends joke with me, oh, you're going on another vacation. Yep. I'm taking time off again. You know why? Because if I don't, I'm going to deplete my emotional resources, and that's not going to be any good for me or for you. I'm going to deplete my physical resources. Again, no good for me, no good for you, right? And so we learn to schedule these things in our life. You know, and see, well, I can't do that. There's no money in it. Well, plan that. I talk about planning, right? You remember years ago, I don't know if they have this anymore, but a bank used to have a Christmas fund where you would put money in every month. So when Christmas time came, you had money. Well, do the same thing. Plan a vacation fund, right? Take $30 a month out or whatever for a year. You know what I mean? And listen, there are vacations you can do cheap. You can, right? I mean, you find the best deals to fly somewhere or go somewhere, right? I mean, you can do it. Don't use that as an excuse. And so schedule quarterly times where you relax, where you get away. Plan your vacations. Last thing is this, number 4 is collaboration. Collaboration. Yeah. And some people go on vacation, they piggyback on other people's vacations. I'm just saying. Okay, so last one is collaboration. You ready? Collaboration. Sorry, I can't go into any more detail than that. Join with others. Join with others. Finish this sentence for me. If you want the job done right, do it yourself. That's wrong. That's absolutely wrong. Join with others. That's like the dumbest thing I ever heard. You know what that is? Let me tell you what that is. That's a perfectionist on the road to burnout. That's all that is. If you want it done right, do it yourself. A perfectionist heading for burnout. What did Jesus do? Luke 5, Jesus calls disciples. Why? He wasn't going to do it alone. I need other people. I need other people to help. Luke chapter 5, he appointed 12. He designated them as apostles that they might be with him. Then he said, and this in Matthew 26, then he said to them, my soul was overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here with me. Be with me. Keep watch with me. Help me. And then just the last principle is this. The last principle is, I wish I had time to develop this. I'm out of time, but it's salvation. And here's what I mean by that. Jesus said this. This is what he wants to give you and me, is salvation. He said, come to me, all who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I'll give you rest. Take my yoke, my teaching. Take my teaching upon you, because I'm humble and gentle, and you'll find rest for your souls. Isn't that what we all long for, is soul rest? where you're even in the midst of a busy schedule, your soul is at peace. It's at rest. I'm not suggesting that this is a definitive list, right? But just take some of these thoughts today with you. Take them with you and incorporate them into your life. And think about what's it really all about anyways? I want to live my life. I want to have a life of peace. I want to live with others. I want to love God. And I want to love others. That's how I want to live my life. I want to do what I want to do in my life what makes me most alive. I want to use my talents and my abilities in that area. I think what you'll find is, as we continue to grow in these things, we're going to live that John 10:10 kind of life, right? That abundance that God wants for each one of us. Let's stand. Okay, so it wasn't short like I thought, like Michelle's messages, but I hope that something was able to speak to your heart today. I really do. I hope that this whole series about growing has touched you in some way, that you're taking some of these thoughts and you're applying them to your life, and you're growing. And you're on your journey to become more like Jesus. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for today. Thank you for all my friends that are here today. I pray that as we go in your Spirit that dwells in our hearts and in our life continually, that you'll bring these thoughts back to our remembrance, that we can meditate, we can ruminate on them, that we can live the abundant life that you so desire us to live. We thank you for all in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Thanks, friends. Have a great day.